I've spent half the day tearing up the garage and my shed looking for this tool. What am I going to do with that? Stick around and I'll show you. Hello everyone and welcome to Jacob's Triangle. I'm Randy. As you saw before, I was showing you this tool. What is that for? Well, let me show you what I got going on here in the back of the truck. We have a roll of 1/2-inch drip line, some elbows and tees, and other drip irrigation items. We're going to be doing a drip system. I wanted to show you about this tool that I'm using. It is a drip lane piercer. It is for piercing holes in the drip line so that you can put the emitter in it or connector or whatever to run a line out to your plant, or to have an emitter that will drip directly onto your plant. It has this little sleeve here that slides in here, so it adjusts it so you can use it for different sizes, like 1 inch, and this what I got is 3/4 inch. So you put that in there, adjust it down to 3/4 inch. So it's useful for different sizes. And then you put the drip line in there like that, give it a squeeze, bam, there you go. Nice hole. Now I know that there are the drip line pokers or piercers that it's a handle that you kind of twist and push and twist and push and twist and push to pierce the hole. Look how quick this does it. If you have a lot of drip lines that you're going to do, or if you just have a little bit that you're going to do like every year, like I'm going to be with my garden, this is the way to go. You can go through a bunch of plants like you would like in a garden and poke a bunch of holes and have everything done pretty quickly. So I'm going to get busy. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run a drip line along the ends of all of the rows of the garden, which is going to be used to make essentially a manifold that's going to distribute the water to each of the rows in the garden. This may be the part that induces lots of cussing too. Hopefully it won't. Just kind of stretch it out along here. There we are at the last tomato row. This is the reason I think it's going to cause cussing, because it tries to coil up and follow me. We bring it back out. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is at each of the rows, I'm going to cut the main line that's coming in, and I'm going to put a connector, either a T in the center rows or an elbow at the end rows, so that the main line that runs along the end of the garden will be charged, and then it will feed down each of the rows. So I'm going to cut it at each of the rows now. I went and found me a brick to put on the end of the line, because it's going to keep trying to coil up on me and chase me down, and it's just going to make the job more difficult. So I'll put a brick on it to weight it down and hold it in place while I go make my other cuts. I'll probably bring the brick with me as I keep cutting stuff, because once I cut the pipe or the drip line, I won't need to hold on to it anymore, because it's going to be where it's going to be. Let's go on to the next one where I'm going to make my first cut. Okay, here we are at the next row. I'm going to make my cut. I'm going to make my cut in towards the center. So that way, I don't want the drip line running right down the center of the area that I'm wanting to water. I want it to run along the side, and then I'm going to run little feeder hoses from this main drip line into the center of the area I want to plant. So I'll cut this off here. not bad. It's not trying to coil up on me too bad. We'll go on to the next one. Now we're at the row with the peppers, eggplant, and okra, and some cucumbers down at the end, I think. So we're going to go to the other side of this one so that we're not, again, running the drip line right through the center of the area that we want to water. We'll run the hoses in like I said before. So once again, another cut. And there we go. One more, and then their manifold line will be all cut. Okay, here we are at the last row, which is our tomato row. And I'm going to run this one on the inside. I'll give her a cut here. And there we go. Our manifold line is all ready to go. Okay. This is very simple. I've tried to overcomplicate it, thinking that these have to be taken off, and they don't. These just, they push together. There's that one. And there's that one. You know, push a little bit hard on them, but they go together. I'm assuming that those are going to be pretty hard to get apart too, which is probably good. And then the next thing that we're doing, I'm putting a little inline valve here. And the reason I'm putting an inline valve is so that when I'm wanting to give some extra water to other parts of the garden, but not necessarily the tomatoes, I can turn the tomatoes off, or I can turn the tomatoes on. So there we go, there's our first connection. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we need to put a connection in for the hose. You got to have a way to get the water into the drip system. So we'll put a cut in the drip line here. We can put the hose in, the hose connection I should say. Shove it on in there. There's that one. There's that one. And there it is. Okay, here we are at our first row of our sister plantings, which our sister planting appears to only have corn growing well. If you like seeing this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. That's a channel that is documenting a homestead from literally the ground up, because you know we have no house out here, we have no water, we have no utilities. So we are definitely starting from the ground up here. So if that's something that you're interested in tracking, watching as I document it, please feel free to subscribe, like, and hit the notification button down there. Now we're going to go on to the last row of the sister plants. Okay, here we are at the last row of the sister plantings. This first circle of corn is kind of short, but looking at this, I've decided to kind of change my plan, and this is something that'll happen as you're doing things. You plan something one way, and then when you get to working on it, you'll realize that there's a flaw in your plan that you need to rework it. And that's what I'm doing here. I was planning on running my drip line all the way to the end and running on the outside, and I think I've decided that that's not a good idea, because if I want to go down the outside with the tractor or put up a fence or something, my drip line could interfere with that. So I'm going to move it to the inside of this row, and this is going to keep it from interfering with the outside edge of the garden. Plus it's going to aesthetically, not that it matters a whole lot, but it's going to aesthetically match the other end at the tomatoes, so that both ends are at the inside of the garden area. And we shove our elbow on there. And there we go. Okay, there's the front row all done. All we have to do is run a line down each of the 4 rows. Then we'll go along and run drip lanes out to our planting areas. So I'm going to do the drip lanes out down each of the rows, and then we'll come back and I'll show you the hole poking and putting together the lines that goes to each of the planting areas. And here's why I said this stuff can cause cussing. I figured I could just set the coil down on the ground with the open end up, and it would just uncoil from the top as I pull it down the row. Well, it had a different idea. It decided to tangle up. So now I get to untangle that mess and get my drip line going again. It does take me a few minutes, but it's a pain in the butt. So a learning moment for me. Just because something seems like it should work and make things easier, doesn't mean it's going to. It actually backfired on me pretty big time, made a big mess. Now I got a coil of, well, I don't have a coil. I have a mess of drip line that I got to straighten out and try to figure out how to coil it back up again. But I'm going to do that after I'm finished doing the rest of the drip line installation. So I'm going to go along and put in staples to hold things down, and then we're going to put in drip emitters. Okay, now we're going to put our staples in. What this does is it just holds the drip line in place so it doesn't slide all over the place. And pretty straightforward. Put it in the ground, get your hammer, hammer it in. Pretty easy. I'll go ahead now. Do that to all of the drip lines. You don't have to do it super frequently because, like I said, just to hold it in place. So I'm going to go down the lines and get them stapled in. Now, when you're driving these staples in, you don't have to hammer them really super tight to the drip line. It just has to be snug. You just want it to hold it, not strangle it. Because if it's too tight, the water won't be able to flow through, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing the drip line. Okay, we're approaching the end of this installation. I've gone through and installed all of the bubblers for all of the corn plants that's supposed to be our sister plants. And now I've gone through and I've pierced holes in the drip lines next to all of the other plants, the peppers, eggplants, okras, and all the tomatoes. And the next step now is that I am going to take our drip line, the extension or the capillaries, and I'm going to pre-assemble these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them off about 18 inches and then pre-assemble them with the drip on one side and the connector on the other side, so I can just go along and plug them in and place them next to the plant where I want them. Okay, there we go. 25-liter tubes all cut and ready to be assembled. Let me show you how we do that. Okay, take your feeder tube and your little connector. I don't know how good you'll be able to see that. And you take your connector, you put it into the tube, and then you take your emitter, you put it into the other end of the tube, like that. That one didn't quite go in good. they don't go in good, get a pair of pliers that you can push with, kind of twist it in there. And there, one down, 24 more to go. Now, something that I'm doing to make my life easier when it comes to putting these into the drip tubes is these have a sharp end. It's supposed to be a self-piercing and then a blunt end. I am putting that blunt end into the tube coming off of the drip line. And the reason I'm doing that is because I can sit here on the tailgate of the truck and I can struggle with putting these in, and I can use my pliers. Instead of trying to fight with it out there at the plant, trying to get it in. This way, that's got a taper to it. It should poke through the hole that I made fairly easily. So a little trick that I think is going to make my life easier. Probably will work better than my trick of trying to pull the hose and get it to uncoil. So we'll see how it works when I get them all done. I'm about halfway, about a quarter of the way through. So I'm going to sit down on the tailgate of the truck, keep on plugging away. Okay, we're ready to push our feeder tubes in. As you see, that's the end that I left the sharp barb on. The idea being that it should be easier for me to push that into the tube than it is pushing the blunt end in. And the emitter, I'm using 2 gallon per hour emitters. And something to note about these, because they do have a barb on the end, you can use that as a connector. So you can put that directly into, put it directly into your tube and then have your open-ended line out to your plant. You don't have to use these connectors that I used. I just used them because I want to have my emitters at the plant. You can do it either way. With drip irrigation, there's lots of variations that you can use. Now go ahead and just push this in here. Push it in, snap, there it goes. Randy wins again. Okay, so we got that in there. Put the emitter over here next to the base of the plant. There you go, let's get you over here so you can see what I'm doing. Put the emitter here near the base of the plant. That's where you want the water, is close to the plant. There you go. It's going to move around. And because the tubing just came off of a coil, it's kind of being resistant. As it goes through a few heat cycles, it'll relax a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and crank through and put these 25 lines that I put together in and probably call it a night. Tomorrow is when I'll come back out and finish it up. I did discover that I shorted myself on the number of emitters that I needed, so I'm going to have to go to the store and get some more emitters. So when I come back out tomorrow, I'm going to finish up those, and then we'll flush the system out before we close it up and get it ready to work. And then we'll do the final adjustments of the bubblers for the corn, and we'll see how good it works. I think it's going to work well for me. All right, welcome back. It's day 2. I went to the hardware store this morning and I picked up another package of emitters. So I got the rest of the plants finished up. So everybody's got an emitter on them now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to flush the system out before we close it up and put it into operation. You want to flush it out because while you're assembling stuff, it's inevitable that you're going to get some dirt inside of the drip lines. So before you power or charge it up, you want to flush it out because dirt will plug up your emitters. So that's what we're going to do now. Let me show you my setup. This is the setup we're using today. The blue 50-gallon barrel is what I'm going to use to flush the dirt and debris out of this system. And the 330-gallon tote is what I usually use for watering the garden. I connect the hose to it and use gravity to water each of the plants individually. Now I'm going to use this little Harbor Freight water pump that I bought a couple of years ago. I'm going to plug that into my generator, and then I will connect that in line between the garden hose from the water tote and the connector here in the drip system. And I believe that running this is going to help me water the garden a lot faster than the 4 hours it takes me to water normally. Here's a water pump all hooked up. I'll put a board under it later to get it up out of the mud. But for now, we're going to pump the system out, get the debris out. A drip system with long runs will take a lot of water to flush out, so be sure that you let the water run for quite a while so it's nice and clear. Crimp the end, slide your crimp holder on, bend the hose over, slide it in the other side, slide it back. Okay, there we go. We've got the lines crimped and the system is ready to charge. And all I have to do is start everything up and go through and check for leaks and adjust my bubblers on the corn, and my system's ready to go. If you liked this content, please, I'll put my face up there. You click on my face to subscribe, and down below hit the notify button and like this video. If you have any comments about this, please leave your comments down below. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, there we go. That's the first part. We got all of the drip lines in, ran along all of the rows. That's what's going to distribute the water to all of the rows. It's not going to distribute the water to the individual plants. Now we're going to go good Lord. When you're doing this, oh, we're bending. Nice. Now when you're driving these staples in, remember that they will bend easily. Okay, when you're driving these staples in, you don't have to hammer them super tight to the pipe, but you do have to get them in without them bending all the shit. When you're driving these staples in, if they bend too much, you give them a toss.